My name is Lucas Williams. I am from Tweedheads, New South Wales, from the Bundjalung people. I run a business called Ghana Healing, and we go across remote communities or Indigenous communities in Australia, implementing trauma-informed tools to reverse the effects of colonisation and improve the bio-neurosystems for our people. When non-Indigenous people landed in Australia, we'd been living here for 60,000 years. Aboriginal people had a system in place that worked. The impact of colonisation was massive. Our values had been lost. Our people had lost the rights to their lands. They had lost language in different areas, massacres, and they're put into places and missions and reserves. But I think it goes a little bit further of the impacts, what that done for the biochemistry of our systems and the neurochemistry of our systems. It's left a mark inside of our body that's so rampant. It was a scary world at home when I was a young fella. My father was quite an angry man. At a young age, at about 7 I think I was, my father had actually run over my mother. I started picking up alcohol when mum and dad would have parties. At about the age of 9, I remember that we had some neighbours that moved in that were non-Indigenous and from the army. I was sexually assaulted by the next door neighbour, and trying to make sense as a child with all that traumatic experience, it was quite heavy and something that I could never understand. At the age of about 13, I left school, and that's where I started to move into crime. I learned how to fight and learned how to box, and then I started to use that on other people. And I'd go into nightclubs and I'd hold people up at gunpoint and take all their money. I'd put a lot of fear into people. I disassociated from the world and myself. I couldn't think properly, I couldn't feel properly. My violence started to really climb to a place of rage. I reached a point where I'd learned how to manufacture speed in my local area back home. I'd be selling pounds and kilos of speed at different times. And so all up, I think I've probably done, 6, maybe 7 years jail and created a lot of pain for people in that process. I remember the turning point for me was I'd looked at my mother and father's pain, my children's pain, and the pain of other people, the fear that I'd see in their eyes. I was 28 and it was January 2012. When I'd used drugs for the last time in my life. And it was also the big turning point for me in my life. It was a spiritual experience. I went to go to sleep this night. I tried to move and I couldn't move and I couldn't talk. I felt like ancestors had come to me and showed me all the experiences that I'd gave people over the years. The next morning I got up out of bed and I went to the beach that day, and it felt like I'd stepped out into the world and seen the clouds and the trees for the first time ever since I was born. Made an agreement with myself that I'd never hurt people again, and I would start to live the man that I actually was meant to be. And so whatever happened through that night, I don't know, but it was something that kind of woke me up and stepped me out into the world and saying, you have something to do and it starts today. And that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years, is healing my past and healing my family and introducing these healing stuff to other people. I didn't know how to live in a world that was away from drugs and alcohol. I had to relearn everything that I'd learned in my life. I had always talked with a man called Greg Telford, and he used to do healing circles for men. And that's when I started to step into these healing circles and started to tell my story and started to understand what feelings were. A week after I'd made a decision not to use and to change my life, I walked into Ballina TAFE and I signed myself into a course that is Cert 4 in AOD. And then from there, I started to work in an Aboriginal men's rehab, which took me a bit deeper into understanding what it took for Aboriginal people to start to heal. And then I went on to a degree at Wollongong Uni, Indigenous Trauma and Recovery Practices. So then I took it a little bit further and I done a master's degree in Indigenous Health. And that's where I started to develop Ghana Healing and operate that across Australia. I move across a lot of communities. I see all the sadness in Australia. I see the sadness in our people. I see that there's a lost voice still. Aboriginal people can be looked upon as alcoholics, they're drug addicts, they're using bad behaviour, violence. But all these types of stuff is actually being implemented by non-Indigenous people into Australia. And to introduce a poison like alcohol and drugs, it just does not sit with our system. That 200 years is a very short time for our people to catch up. The behaviours that we may use actually is never part of our culture. This last 225 years, seeing our elders being disrespected. We're seeing our young people, they're going to jail because they don't know, they've lost the value of culture. That was my life, as that young Aboriginal man that lost values, lived a life in jail. What we offer with Ghana is something that is experiential. We develop and deliver programs for people to receive the information within their body and their brain, and that could be traditional healing circles, tool making, song, dance. The song lines through the stars will tell stories. Hunting, we do things in a traditional way where it's law. That is helping the inside spirit when we do these processes. It's something that's practiced and been practiced for 60,000 years. We know that this works. The evidence shows that it improved the social and emotional well-being for Aboriginal people. It helps fire new neurons, new pathways and new ways of healing within the brain to improve our ways of thinking and our ways of being in community. The impact of this work that we're seeing is a reduction in suicides across communities. There's a reduction of men using violence against women, and there's a lot of healing being implemented and a lot of feedback that this is working. My mother and father now, they had a divorce, but they've come together through these healing circles. They've come together with kindness, and then eventually we got all of our family involved. And we got to talk about the pain that our family had created for each other, the domestic violence, the sexual assault, and what we need to do as a family to start to love each other the way that we need to and that we should love each other. Our family now all understand this way of life, of healing, of what trauma is and how we want to raise our next generations. Luckily enough, I get to work with two of my sisters. They do work with trauma and with people within our local communities, and we get to do it together, and that's what's special. And so that makes me feel that I have a rich spirit. I have a meaning, a purpose on this land. I have 4 children, and they all live in the Bundjalung area, so in our nation, we're always coming together and improving ourselves. If I could leave one bit of information for my children, it would be to walk this earth with kindness and treat everybody with respect and love. We know who we are inside. We have to be that person. My dream would be for programs like Ghana Healing to be operating right across Australia, create them songlines and them ceremonies and them songs, bring them back alive, because we know that that improves our health. And so we can start to live beside non-Indigenous people in a healthy way and a way that we understand Australia, so we can all walk together.
For more information, call us or visit our website, ghanahealing.com.